The exercise files for today's course are located in the video description below. Don't forget to like and subscribe.
Hello everyone, I am Trish Connor-Cato. Welcome to Tableau video training course. Tableau is a visual analytics platform that makes it easier for people to explore and manage data, and faster to discover and share insights that can change businesses and the world. It helps people and organizations be more data-driven. Tableau supports data prep, analysis, governance, collaboration, and more. As a continuation of the Tableau Introduction video training course, this advanced course is designed to boost the students' competence when it comes to creating visualizations and creating dashboards. The course goes into considerable detail on these two subjects and explores, among other areas, how to create a range of different charts, maps, user-defined fields, as well as a host of advanced features and abilities. We'll start by connecting to a variety of data sources. This will leave you with some great workbooks to practice on and develop on your own after this course. Then we'll move into creating a wide variety of charts, including Univariate. The first module will focus on connecting to data sources. Now, it has 8 lessons in this module, and we'll start by connecting to text, Excel, and Access files. I have the files for you in the video description, and they're listed on this slide. So you're going to want to grab U.S. cities population. That is a text file. Airline comparison is an Excel file. And there is an Access database file called Northwind that you're going to want to grab as well. But wait, hold on, there's more that you're going to grab before we're done with this slide. In the second lesson, you're going to learn how to paste in a data source from the Clipboard. And we'll be using 2 different Excel files for that. They're named Vehicles and Pricing. We're going to use those same 2 Excel files in Lesson 3 when you learn how to merge multiple data sources. And in Lesson 4, we're going to connect to other databases. That's the title of the lesson. We're actually going to connect to a SharePoint list. If you have access to SharePoint, if you want to, you can take a moment and go create a quick list on SharePoint that we will connect to later in this module. The other thing is, in order to connect to a SharePoint list, you're going to need a specific driver. There is a Word document in the video description called Useful Links, and it's a link to the driver that you will need. We'll move on to Lesson 5, where you'll get introduced to the Tableau interface. Lesson 6, you'll learn about changing data types and metadata, and we're going to use a built-in Tableau file for that one, so you won't find it in the video description. In Lesson 7, you'll learn about applying filters. And in Lesson 8, you'll learn about dimensions and measures. And I should also mention that this slide deck is also in the video description for your future reference. Now, if you want to take a moment and pause the video and go grab the files that are noted on this slide, including the Useful Links Word document, go ahead and do so, and then resume. Before we get hands-on in Tableau, I have a couple of other slides I'd like to review with you, and I will be referencing this slide deck throughout the course. So during this module, you're going to learn how to copy and paste data into Tableau, and you can do that easily from a variety of Office applications, including Excel, Word. You can also copy and paste HTML tables from web pages, and tables that are copied as comma-separated values or tab delimited can be pasted into Tableau. So there's 2 things that could happen when you paste data into Tableau. If you paste data on the data source view, Tableau will create a new connection in an existing data source, if any. If you paste data on the sheet view, Tableau will create a new data source that you can begin analyzing. So a connection versus a data source. And that data source would be saved as a text file to your Tableau repository when you save the Tableau workbook. So just keep that in mind. We're going to get to that in this module. I've added a slide here about the data sources that are supported in Tableau Desktop. And there's an active link on the slide where you can go in and look at the supported connectors on your own. You'll see them when we get into Tableau, but I just wanted you to have this slide for future reference. So go ahead and launch Tableau now, and we'll get started. So I'm in Tableau Desktop, and the first thing we're going to do is we're going to connect with a text data source. So just a little bit about this home screen interface here in Tableau, okay? You have your toolbar at the top as usual. You have a couple of menu items there. We have the connect area on the left, the connect pane, where you can look on Tableau server. You can connect to a file, to a different kind of server. There's even more. So I told you there's a lot of different data sources, also known as connectors, that you can connect to. And this is where you can find them by doing the arrow next to more. And then you have some saved data sources that come with Tableau Desktop. And you'll see the sample Superstore one that we're going to connect with a little bit later. You also have accelerators, and they're pre-built dashboards that you can play with. And on the right side, you have a more accelerators link, which you can get to if necessary. If you have an existing Tableau workbook, over on the right at the top, there's an open a workbook link that you can use to access that. So what we want to do in the connect pane under to a file, we're going to select text file, and then you're going to navigate to wherever you put the files that you bought in from the video description. The text file is U.S. cities population. At this point, I only have one text file in my folder, and I'm going to just double click it to be able to connect with it in Tableau. We'll go into a deep dive on the Tableau interface in just a little bit in this module. But what I want to draw your attention to right now is this data grid on the bottom. You're actually seeing the data that is in that text file that we just connected to. So that's all the data in the text file right there. It's showing 100 rows at a time, as you'll see over here on the right. And it actually has like 9 fields and 304 rows showing here on the left. We're not going to do anything with this file. This is one of the files that you will have that you will be able to come back to and build up later after you learn a bunch of cool things in this advanced course. So what we want to do is we just want to save this file. So there's this little bit of a toolbar here where you can click on save, or you could do Control S. And if it doesn't take you there automatically, you want to navigate to your Documents folder and look for a folder called My Tableau Repository. When you locate it, you're going to double click it, and then you're going to double click Workbooks, because this is a Tableau workbook. And we're just going to name this workbook U.S. Cities Population, and then save. We can go to the File tab there, the File menu, and choose Close. And then what you want to do is right under the word File, right under the File menu, you have the house icon. You want to go back to the Start page, which is your home page. When you're saving workbooks, they will show up here automatically for you. You can pin them there so they never disappear, or in our case, we're going to do the X to say don't show this workbook. The point of that one was how to connect to a text file. Now we're going to connect to a Microsoft Excel file. You've already grabbed this file from the video description, but when I went over that slide, I said we're going to use a file called Airline Comparisons. I've changed my mind, and we're going to use the vehicles file that you brought in from the video description. So in your Connect pane, go ahead and click on Microsoft Excel underneath to a file, and then I'm going to double-click Vehicles to connect to it. So you'll notice a couple of things here. On the left side, it's showing you the connection. So it's the vehicles file. That's a Microsoft Excel file. And then that file has a worksheet in it called inventory. So what you're seeing is the data that's on that inventory sheet. Now, we will be using this file again in just a little bit. So we're going to save this one, but we'll reopen it in just a little while. So go ahead and do your save, and we're going to name it Vehicles and Pricing. And once it's saved, we can go to File and Close. And I'm going to go back to my Start screen by using the Home icon. So I'm going to leave the Vehicles and Pricing tile here because we're going to reopen that Tableau workbook in just a little while. And the last type of file that we're going to connect to right now is the Microsoft Access database named Northwind. And before I do that, I'm going to just get this airline comparison file off of my start screen. And under to a file in the Connect pane, I'm going to select Microsoft Access. Now this one is a little bit different. When you go to open it, it doesn't just take you to where you want to go. You have to click the Browse button at the top, and you'll see that Northwind database that was in the files from the video description, and I'm going to just double click it. So we don't have a database password. That's not necessary. We don't have any workgroup security that we have to work through. At the bottom, we're going to go ahead and click on Open. You'll notice it was processing the request, and then it opens it up. And this is in data source view like we saw earlier. And again, you're going to learn more about this, but it made the connection. If you look at the top of the left pane, it lets you know the connection that you have here. And it's showing all the tables in the database, as well as queries that are in the database as well. So what we're going to do is what we've been doing so far. Again, you're going to have these 3 files that you can play with on your own to build them up after you learn what you're going to learn in this course. So we're going to go ahead and save it. And we're going to call it Northwind. And go ahead and close it and go back to your start screen. Now we're going to paste data into an existing workbook. I got rid of my Northwind tile here, and I'm going to use the Vehicles and Pricing tile to reopen that Tableau workbook. And when you open a workbook, it takes you to a different view. This is called Sheet View. If you look at the bottom of your screen, you'll see that it's on the Sheet 1 tab there. And what we want to do is we want to switch over to the Data Source tab, which is to the left of Sheet 1. So go ahead and click on Data Source to get to that tab. And this is what you've been used to seeing. So what we're going to do here now is we're going to just switch over to the directory where you brought in the files from the video description and open the file named Pricing in Excel. And now I'm going to just click anywhere in this data, and I'm going to do Control A, C to select and copy all the data. And then I'm going to switch back over to Tableau. If we were to use Control V here to paste in Data Source View, let me show you what would happen. Let's go to the Data menu. And you'll notice that in Data Source View, you have two paste data options. The one with Control V is what makes a connection. Now, technically, you could paste it in as a data source here, but the default behavior is pasting it as a connection here. And let's go back to Sheet 1 for a moment and look at the Data menu. And you'll see that there's only one paste option. And when you're in Sheet View, it will only paste it as a data source, not a connection. You don't have an option here. So Control V here means paste it as another data source. Let's go back to Data Source View. And I'm going to just do Control V here. And you'll notice on the left that I have a new connection. It's called Clipboard, and it has a string of numbers after it. The first numbers before it gets to a letter represent the date that you copied it to your clipboard. And so that's one way of getting more data in. If you had it, if it was an HTML table from a website, it would come in as another connection along with the connection that you have existing. Let's do the drop-down arrow next to that clipboard item and choose Remove. So we added it as a connection. We removed the connection. Now let's go back to Sheet 1. And in Sheet 1, we're going to do Control V. So it's still on the clipboard for us. And if you look on the left side, we're on the data pane there. We have a clipboard entry, the same name, but it puts it in here as a new data source instead of a new connection to an existing data source. And you could tell the data source because it has the database icon in front of it. So if you paste it into using the default Control V, if you paste it in Sheet View, it's going to become a new data source. If you paste it in Data Source View, it will create a new connection. So what we're going to do here now is we're going to close this file, but we're not going to save the changes because we're going to marry these two files in a different way in our next lesson. So let's go ahead and go to File, Close, and then say, no, you don't want to save the changes. Before we move on to merging multiple data sources in Tableau, there's some slides I want to go over with you. But before I forget, switch back over to the Excel pricing file and close it. The first slide I want to go over with you is doing a deeper dive into Data Source View. So we've seen this view several times when we have been connecting to our data sources so far. But what I want to just do a deeper dive in, just so you get familiar with what things are called and so on and so forth as you work in Tableau. On the left side of the screen where you have the letter A, that is known as your left pane. It displays details about your data. So it's letting you know what connection is there, what sheets are there, so on and so forth. And then in the upper center, where it says Sample Superstore in big letters there, that is known as the relationships canvas. And you'll see that there is a relationship between the orders and the returns table in that Sample Superstore file. And the line between those two table panes is known as a noodle. Underneath that layer, okay, the relationship canvas, there's another canvas called the joins canvas or the joins unions canvas. And that's indicated by the letter C on this slide. So right here, this is your joins canvas. It's not visible when you first go in. You have to do something to make it show up. And you'll see what that's used for in just a little while. On the bottom of the screen in the background, you have your data grid. That's where we've been looking at the data that we've been connecting to. And to its left is another grid called the metadata grid. Here's some useful information for you in terms of the data types that are supported in Tableau. And you can change the data types of your data that you're connected to in Tableau, which you'll see in this module. So I said that when you're in data source view, the default view is the relationships canvas. That's also known as the logical layer. And you use that layer to combine data using relationships. When we looked at that returns table that was kind of like a pop-out on the slide, that's the other layer that you can get to. So there's a physical layer underneath the logical layer. And you use the physical layer to combine data between tables using joins and unions. Each logical table contains at least one physical table, and it's also known as the join union canvas. So this one talks about the difference between relationships, joins, unions, and blends. Relationships do not merge the data, but keeps it separate. And it's based on a common field. Joins are also based on a common field, but they actually merge the data from the same source. Joins will combine the data and then will aggregate it. Unions also merge table data, but unions append the related fields as rows in the merged data set. And then you have blends. And that's an approach to combine data from multiple varieties of sources and display them on a single screen. Blending will aggregate the data and then will display the combined data. Now, because we're talking about relationships in this module, there are two relationship terms at the bottom of the slide: cardinality and referential integrity. Don't worry about them for now. You'll get to see what they mean as we work with relationships in just a little bit. There's another slide here for your future reference with the cardinality and referential integrity options available in Tableau. And I've included a few slides indicating the join types that are available to you. So back in Tableau, I am going to reopen our vehicles and pricing workbook. And I'm going to make my way to the data source tab. So at the top of the data tab on the left, next to connections, I'm going to go ahead and click add. And I'm going to choose Microsoft Excel. And navigate to where you have your files and open the pricing file. So now I have two connections in here. I have vehicles and I have pricing. And vehicles has the inventory sheet. And if you look under sheets here, you'll see there's a pricing sheet, which is from the pricing file. So what we're going to do is we're going to drag that sheet right onto this relationships canvas. And so it creates a relationship based on a common field, or it's going to create a relationship based on a common field. Now, both of these files have a then column in it. And so if you look at your data grid at the bottom, it's showing you the then column from the pricing file. And that file also has dealer cost and manufacturer suggested retail price. If you hover your mouse over the noodle joining those two tables, inventory and pricing, you'll see that the relationship is inventory to pricing. The cardinality is many to many. So many inventory items are defaulting to many prices. And then you have your related fields there. So VIN from the inventory table equals VIN from the pricing table. And if you look down here in your data grid to the left, you learn more link how the relationships differ from joins. Well, relationships is not combining or merging the data, it's just relating it. And you see that it's using the VIN number from inventory equals the VIN number from pricing. And so it created that relationship. Now, Tableau is really good about that as long as you have a matching field with the same name. Now, the fields don't have to have the same name. If they don't, Tableau probably will not be able to create the relationship for you automatically like it did here. So right now, we're looking at the relationship canvas, and this is also known as the logical layer. To get to the physical layer, we're going to double click on that inventory table on the canvas. So when I double click it, it goes to the physical layer which is where you create your joins and unions. It's also known as the join union canvas. It lets you know that inventory is made of one table. So remember from the slide, even if you're only using one table, it will show in both the logical and the physical layer. Now, we want to create a join between the inventory and the pricing tables. So what we're going to do here is we're going to grab the pricing sheet and drag it and drop it into the canvas. And it automatically creates a join between the two tables. So it's saying, if I hover over the join symbol, it's an inner join of inventory. Notice it appended the pricing table with the number 1, right? And it's based on the VIN field in both tables. So an inner join. In the inner join, only the common matching data between the two tables is displayed. And that's what we're going to have here. Now, if I wanted to change the join type, I can just click right on that join symbol, and you'll see the other join types that are there. We're not changing it, but I just wanted to let you know that you could if you wanted to. And I'm going to close that join type window. And now if I look at the bottom, it's merged the data, right? So you'll notice in your data grid down here, it's letting you know underneath the data type symbol, it lets you know which table it's pulling from. So there are your inventory tables. Your inventory tables are the first set of fields. And now you have your pricing tables as your second set of fields. And since we don't want the VIN showing twice, I'm going to hide the VIN column from the pricing table. And I'm going to just right click on the column header and choose hide. So there's our merged data set. Now, if we want to go back to the logical layer at this point, we can do the X in the upper right hand corner of that physical layer, and it brings you back to the logical layer. And again, in your data grid, you can see your combined, merged data set. Also, if you notice up here in the canvas, it lets you know, if you hover over inventory, it lets you know its logical table and its physical tables. And it also gives the symbol for the join there. So you know that those tables are joined. So the automatic relationship that happened is because the different tables have a common field. It was able to automatically create the relationship for you, but that did not merge the data together. That just related those tables to each other. We used the join from the physical layer in order to be able to merge the data together. And then we got rid of the redundant Venn column that we didn't need in our merged data set. Go ahead and save this file, and you can go ahead and close it. So now we're ready to connect to a SharePoint list. So I'm going to go back to my home icon to get back to my start screen. And I'm going to go ahead and get rid of my vehicles and pricing tile here. And this time where it says connect on the connect pane on the left, we're going to go to the more arrow. So we saw this a little bit earlier. These are all the connectors or the data sources that you can connect to. And on that list in the middle, toward the bottom, you will find SharePoint list. And that's what I'm going to select. So this is the one that you will need a driver for. Now, if you don't have the driver, it will let you know as you go through this process. So you have to give it the URL to your SharePoint site and the addition of SharePoint. And then I'm using a username and password for authentication. And I'm going to go ahead and put in my password and then click sign in. You have the Word document from the video description that gives you a link to the driver, but in the pop-up that comes up, if you don't have it, it will also have a link to that driver. So I'm going to go ahead and put my password in. And then I've clicked sign in, so it's executing the query. So now on the left side in the data pane, it's showing all of my SharePoint lists, libraries, stuff like that. So I have one here that I called Tableau training, and I'm going to just drag that onto the canvas. So when I look at the data pane, it's bringing me every field, even the ones that are not showing in my SharePoint list, every field possible in that list. So there are only 2 of them that I'm interested in. The best way to see this is to go to Sheet 1. And the only 2 fields that I'm interested in are the region title field, and then I have total sales 2021. Those are the only 2 fields I'm interested in. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to drag region title to the rows shelf up top. And then I'm going to drag my total sales 2021 to columns. And now I actually have a visualization showing by region the total sales for 2021. And we'll be doing more on the sheet tab and getting an overview of it in just a little while. So what I'm going to just do is I'm going to double click the Sheet 1 tab, and I'm going to name it 2021 Sales by Region and press enter. And it also gives me a title on my sheet with the same name. Now I can do those independent of each other, but by default, when you name the sheet, it's going to apply whatever you name the sheet to the title. So now what I'm ready to do is just go and save this one, this workbook, and I'm going to call it 2021 Sales by Region, and I'll do a dash SharePoint so I know where it originated. And I'm going to go ahead and save it and close it. So we're going to be working in a built-in Tableau file for the rest of this module and into subsequent modules. And we're going to be spending a lot more time in Sheet View, which you just saw briefly when I created that visualization from my SharePoint list. So before we get into that, let's go over some definitions and roles that will be useful for you as we proceed in this course. So the first thing is a pill. When I dragged from the data pane on the left in sheet view, the fields into the rows and column shelves, those are called pills, the fields that we drag. They're known as pills. You can call them anything that you want to. We basically have two different types of fields in Tableau, dimensions and measures. So a dimension is a field that can be considered as an independent variable. So any field containing qualitative categorical information is a dimension in Tableau. So for example, a region field or a state field. Dimensions can categorize, segment, and reveal the details in your data. And then you have measures, which is a dependent variable. Its value is a function of one or more dimensions. So Tableau treats any field containing numeric or quantitative information as a measure. For example, sales. When you drag a measure into the view, Tableau applies an aggregation to that measure by default, and it typically defaults to the sum aggregate. And then you have roles for your fields in Tableau. They're either continuous or discrete. They're color-coded, which will help. So continuous fields are green, and it forms an unbroken whole without interruption. Generally, continuous fields add axes to the view, for example, sales. And both dimensions and measures can be continuous. And then you have discrete fields, and that means individually separate and distinct. They're represented as blue in Tableau. And generally speaking, discrete fields add headers to the view. So you might have a heading for region in your view. Both dimensions and measures can be discrete. So here's our breakdown of sheet view in Tableau. And we're just going to point out a few things in this view. So starting at the top, of course, you have your workbook name. So where it says pages, filters, marks, so this panel here, I'll draw an arrow to it or attempt to. So this panel here, as well as columns and rows up top, those are either called cards or shelves. Technically speaking, columns, rows, pages, I believe, and filters are known as shelves, and then the marks card is known as a card. The terms are used interchangeably. Again, doesn't matter what you call them as long as you know how to use them. We also have a little bit of a toolbar right underneath your menu bar here. So where you have your icons showing, running underneath your menu bar. That is your toolbar. In the middle of the screen, which would normally be called the canvas area, right? That is actually known as a view here. You can call it the canvas. It's where you create your visualization by using the cards and shelves. You have an icon on your toolbar. The first icon on your toolbar will take you to your start page here. On the left side underneath that, you have your data pane. It has two tabs. It has the data tab and it has the analytics tab up top, and you'll become familiar with both of those as we go through this course. At the bottom, well, you already know how to get back to data source view by using the data source tab there. And underneath all of that, you have a status bar. So in this screenshot, it's showing there's 192 marks in the visualization. Each different point is known as a mark. 3 rows by 16 columns, and it's giving you the sum of profit there in the status bar as well. And then you have your sheet tab. So this screenshot shows sheet 1. To the right of sheet 1, you have 3 buttons. The first one is to add a new worksheet, another sheet, and it would name it sheet 2 by default. The second one is to create a dashboard sheet. And the third one is to create a story sheet. And there are other ways of getting those new sheets into your file as well. The marks card is critical for how your visualizations are going to look. So here's an example here. Tableau displays data by using marks, where every marker corresponds to a row or group of rows in your data source. So on the marks card at the top, you can change the shape of the marks on your visualization. It defaults to automatic depending on the data that you have, but you do have the ability to change the shape from that drop down. In this particular screenshot here, they're using a field called segment, and that's a color range on the visualization. The region has the shape on the visualization, and the size of the marks on the visualization are represented by the sum of the quantity. That's what it's showing in this example. I have a more detailed table here of the settings for the mark card for your future reference. So we're going to get into changing data types and metadata now, and we're going to use a Tableau built-in data set for this. The first thing I'm going to do is get rid of my 2021 sales by region SharePoint tile. And by the way, if your tile is not there, again, on the right side, you can open an existing workbook from the link on the right. What we're going to do on the Connect tab on the left, under Save Data Sources, you'll see Sample Superstore. It's built into Tableau. So I'm going to just click on that, and it opens up in Sheet View. I'm going to go back to Data Source View. So it opens with the relationships. There's a relationships between orders table and the people table, and a relationship between orders and the returns table based on a common field. And again, I can hover over those relationship noodles to see what type of relationship it is and the related field. So that's one thing. Now, this data comes in, and if I look at my data grid at the bottom, you'll see that I'm seeing the data for the orders table. There's some additional fields on the right and stuff like that. And so that's in the data grid. And then to the left of that, this is your metadata grid here. So let's start by doing a couple of things here. In the metadata grid, it shows you the data type, and it's, some kind of symbol. So ABC means it's text. You have a calendar looking icon. That means it's a date. You have one that looks like a globe, right? And that means that it's data that can be used in maps, so on and so forth. You have one that's numeric data. You have a group which is represented by a paper clip, and you have a bin which is represented by a series of vertical lines. So those are the data types over there. It lets you know the field name, has a drop down next to that, so you might want to review some of those things on the drop down. And it lets you know the physical table that it's pulling from. And it also has a remote field name column as well. Now, in your metadata grid, scroll down until you can see the postal code field. And you'll notice that that has the globe as a data type. So it can be used on the map. It has a geographic role assigned to it. If you click on that globe to the left of postal code, you'll notice the field is actually a string, right? It doesn't have the ABC there because it's been assigned a geographic role. If you hover over geographic role, it's been mapped to zip code postcode, so it can be used on a map, right? But, sometimes when you bring data in, if your postal codes could be read as numeric. Now, we never want our postal codes numeric unless we want to do some kind of math on them. I don't think the sum of postal codes or average postal code will make any sense. So you want to make sure your postal code always comes in as a string. Just wanted to point that out. Let's scroll up in our metadata grid and click on the little calendar icon to the left of the order date field. So it comes in as a date. Now, Tableau is pretty good about this. If the original data was in the form of a date and time, it would bring it in as date and time. But it's bringing it in as a date. Now, let's say you decide one day you want to change it to date and time. I'm going to show you what happens and why you would not want to do that. If the original data doesn't have a time, it's unable to give you a time. So let's just click on date and time from that drop down. And notice the calendar icon now has a little clock on it in front of order date. But if you expand the order date field in the grid, all of the times are going to be 12 a.m. because there's not a time in the original data. So go back to your order date data type and change it back to date. Unless your original data has times in it, don't try to use date and time or you'll just get 12 a.m.s for everything, unless you have a need to do that. Another thing we can do from our data grid is we can split a column. So if you look at the customer name column, it has the first and last name in there, and we want to split it so we have a customer first and a customer last column. So the way we're going to do that, in your metadata grid, go to the drop down next to customer name, and you're going to choose split. And if you scroll all the way to the right in your data grid, you'll see that it created, when you do a split, it will put the new columns all the way on the right side. So you have a customer name split 1 and a customer name split 2. It was able to do it kind of like automatically. So what we're going to do here is we're going to rename those columns. So I'm going to right click where it says customer name split 1. And I'm going to rename it, and I'm going to call it customer first. And press enter. And go ahead and rename customer name split 2 to customer last. And once they're both renamed, I'm going to go back to the left so I can see the original customer name column. I can right click on its header and I can hide it so it won't show in our data set. And by the way, it's good to know how to unhide things if you accidentally hide things. All the way to the right, right above your data grid, you will see a gear symbol. And if you click that gear, you'll see that you can show hidden fields. We're not going to show the hidden fields. And the last change we're going to make to the data here is we want to rename a field. So the segment field, we want it to say market segment. So I'm going to just right click on its header and choose rename and put the word market at the front of it and press enter. So that's the way the field will show up when we start doing visualization. So there's one area of data source view that I didn't talk about, so far, and it's in the upper right-hand side of data source view. And that's this connections and filters area. So by default, I would say most of the time when you connect to a data source, it will be a live connection, meaning that if you're working with a live connection and you're creating visualizations and that original source is being updated, you will get the new modified information automatically and your visualizations will update automatically. Now, when we did the join, when we connected to the SharePoint list, and I didn't point it out when that was open, but when we connected to the SharePoint list, it connected as an extract. And if you go up and you do the option button in front of extract, you'll see that automatically it says extract will include all data, right? Unless you filter it. And what happens when you're working with an extract, like the SharePoint list was an extract. So when we connected to it, it gave us the list at that time. If that list is being updated, then we would have to refresh to get the changes for that list. And we'll revisit the connection type a little bit later in the course. So change it back to live. You can filter a live connection. You can filter an extract as well. So when it's on live and you use the filter area, it is going to be filtering your data. It's not actually filtering the source data, but it's filtering your view of the data for use in Tableau. Because you're filtering in here and you're on the data source tab, the information on all of your sheets will be filtered by whatever filter you do here. So we're going to go ahead and apply a filter here. Let's go over to the add link under filters. And then we're going to click add. And we're going to use the state province field and then click OK. So now we're just going to filter for 5 states. We're going to go ahead and do a check mark in front of Arizona. We want to grab California. We're going to scroll down and grab New Mexico. And we'll do Oregon and Washington states. So down at the bottom, it lets you know that you have selected 5 of 59 values, and we're going to click OK. You'll have more opportunities of filtering throughout the course, not necessarily at the data source level, but at the visualization level. And we're going to click OK. So now it's only showing those 5 states. We can look at our data grid and see that it's only showing those 5 states. And now let's go to sheet 1 and we'll build a quick visualization so you can see that it's only going to show the states that we filtered for. So on the left side, on the data pane, you'll see we have our customer first and customer last fields that we split. We have segment renamed to market segment showing there, right? We have the original customer name field not showing because we hid it. And you'll notice the blue and the green coding, right? So we're going to expand. You notice we have an expansion arrow in front of location and in front of product. We're going to expand location and we're going to drag state province to rows, to the rows shelf. Excuse me. So you can see it's only bringing in those 5 states that we filtered for because we filtered at the data source level. And then what else are we going to do for this visualization? We're going to add the orders count measure. So it has a measure in this data set called orders count, and we're going to drag that up to columns. So for each state, we're seeing a count of the orders. Easy breezy. Let's go back to data source view. And in the upper right-hand corner, it now says we have one filter applied there, and there's an edit button. We're going to click on edit. We're going to select our filter in the list here, state province filter, and we're going to remove the filter. Click OK. Go back to sheet 1 and notice that you're seeing all of the states now. So when you apply a filter at the data source level, it's going to apply to every sheet that you have in your Tableau workbook. And that's not really practicable most of the time. So I'm going to show you how to do the same filter, but at the sheet level. So what I'm going to do is we want to filter by state province here. So I'm going to hold down my control key, click and hold on state province in the rows shelf. Oops, I clicked a little bit too hard. And drag it to the filter shelf right above your marks card and let it go. So now from here, we're going to select none. And then we're going to select our 5 states. So that would be Arizona, California. We had New Mexico, Oregon, and Washington. And then we're going to click apply at the bottom, and you can see that the visualization is now filtered again for just those 5 states, but at the sheet level or the visual level filter. We can click OK. So let's do, to the right of your sheet 1 tab, do a plus sign. And I just want to show you this. And we're going to drag orders count to columns again. And we're going to drag state province to rows again. So on this sheet, we're getting all of the states because we haven't applied a filter on this sheet. And we're not going to keep this sheet. We're going to right click on your sheet 2 tab and choose delete. And then we're going to double click sheet 1's tab and we're going to name it W and SW order count by customer. And now would be a good time to go ahead and save this file. So I'm going to go to save, and I'm going to call it Sample Superstore Live, so we know it's a live version. Later on, we're going to use this file and make an extract out of it, and go ahead and save it. So let's take a look at that field list on the left again. And you notice the green and the blue coloration there, right? So typically your numeric fields will show with the green symbols and non-numeric fields will show with the blue symbols for the most part in your field list. But blue and green also represent, when you're looking at it in the rows and columns shelf, it also represents whether the field is continuous or if it's discrete. So continuous is green, blue is discrete. Remember, both measures and dimensions can be either continuous or discrete. So let's see what that means and what it looks like. In your column shelf, go to the drop down next to count of orders. Notice it automatically is continuous, and we're going to choose discrete. So now the count of orders become like headings, right? Notice that there's no longer an x-axis going across the bottom. And that just doesn't kind of make sense for what we're trying to ascertain from this data. So we're going to go to the drop down arrow next to count of orders and change it back to continuous. And now you get your x-axis back, which is a measurement of the count of orders. Now we could do the same thing with, well, not continuous and discrete here. It's not going to let us do that for state and province. It's a different reason for that, and I don't want to go into that rabbit hole right now. So now you're seeing the definitions from the slide come to life and seeing the differences of them. Let's just do another save on this Sample Superstore live file, and we're going to leave it open because we're going to use it in the next module. By way of recap, in Module 1, we focused mostly on connecting to different data sources. So we started by connecting to a text file. We used a different Excel file than the airline comparison one on the slide. We used vehicles. And we connected to the Northwind Access database. So you have those Tableau workbooks saved, which means you can go into them, play around with the data, make changes to the data, and create visualizations for more practice for yourself. In the second lesson, we learned how to paste from a clipboard. So we had connected to the vehicles file, and we pasted the contents of the pricing file in, and you saw the different behaviors of pasting depending on where you paste, whether it's data source view or sheet view. Then we learned how to merge multiple data sources. We actually used the vehicles file, and this time we created a join with the pricing file, so you had a merged data source that you could use. After that, we connected to a SharePoint list, which required a driver if you didn't already have it installed. And along the way, you got introduced to the Tableau interface. So we started with data source view, and ultimately you got an overview of sheet view as well. In data source view, you learned how to change data types and metadata once we connected to the Tableau Sample Superstore data source. You also learned how to apply filters both at the data source and the sheet level. And we ended up with an exclamation, which you could actually see in the file, of dimensions and measures. And you also learned about discrete versus continuous. Module 2, we'll be focusing on creating univariate charts. So we have multiple lessons in here. We're going to start by creating tables, bar graphs, pie charts. You'll learn how to sort your charts and graphs. We're going to create histograms and line charts. You're going to learn how to use the Show Me toolbar. We're going to create stacked bar graph and box plots. You're going to learn how to show aggregate measures and also how to show the top 10 items. So what in the world is a univariate chart? Well, it means looking at one variable at a time, trying to understand its mean, median, variance, distribution, etc. And then I have a list of the common types of univariate charts, as well as another slide that gives you an idea of when to use each type of chart. So that's in here as your future reference slide. Let's go back over to Tableau and get started. So in Tableau, let's go ahead and bring up a new sheet. We can use the plus sign icon to the right of our West and Southwest order count by customer sheet. That's one way of getting that new sheet. And even though we used the sheet 2 before, we deleted it, so it's going to repeat that name here, sheet 2 by default. So we're going to start by creating a table, and we're going to drag our market segment field to the columns shelf. And notice it gives us the framework of a table. You'll see a little bit later in this module why it does that. And in the meantime, we're going to grab the sales field. And this time we're going to use our marks card. We're going to drag sales and drop it on the text box in the marks card. So now you're seeing the text in the table are the sales for each market segment. Now let's see what would happen. So we have a table here, right? Really simple table. Let's drag text from the marks card. Now notice at the bottom of the marks card, it has that text icon in front of sum of sales, so you know that that field is occupying the text in the table. We're going to drag that sum of sales from the marks card, and let's put it in the rows box. And so once you put it in rows, it's going to generate a column chart for you. So let's drag it back from rows to now it says label for where text used to be, right? So now it puts it back as text. Really simple to do, right? And so what we want to do though is we want to change the aggregate. We want the average sales by market segment. So in your marks card, you can right click on sum of sales, and you're going to hover over measure sum, and you're going to select average. So now it's showing the average sales by market segment. And we can go ahead and make those columns wider. If you see where I am, I'm in between the consumer and the corporate column, and I'm going to just drag to the right a little bit, and it will adjust all columns. So a very simple table. Congratulations. And now we're going to name this sheet by double clicking it, average sales by market segment. Well done. Now let's go ahead and save. We want to save frequently while we're working in this file. We're going to be working in this sample superstore file a lot. So now I'm going to have you create another table on your own. You're going to create a new sheet, and you're going to create a table that's going to show the sum of sales by, and if you expand your product field, you'll see the category field. So we want to see the sum of sales by category on a new sheet. Go ahead and do that on your own. So just so you can see my work on that one, let me switch to the right tab, and then you'll be able to see my work. This time I put category in rows, and I use sales as text, and it defaults to sum. So I have my table of the sum of sales by category. And I named a sheet tab, which thereby named the title on the page as well. Go ahead and save. So now we're going to create a bar graph, and we're going to do that by adding another new sheet. Another way that you can get a new sheet, because the first plus sign is new worksheet. The second one is new dashboard. The third one is new story down there. But you can go to the worksheet menu and choose new worksheet, and also learn the shortcut key, Control M. So multiple ways of doing the same thing. And so for this sheet, what we're going to do is we're going to drag our sales field to columns, and we're going to drag category, which is under product, to rows, right? So we did this in table format a moment ago, but this time we put both sales and category on the columns and rows shelves. So we didn't use the text or label field in the marks card for this one, which would make it into a table. And so what we're going to do is we're going to click on label in the marks card, even though we didn't drag a field there. And we're going to do the checkbox in front of show mark labels. So now at the end of each bar, we have the sum of sales number. And if you hover over any bar, it'll show you the tooltip, the category, and the sales amount. And we decide we want to add another field to this visualization. So under product, I'm going to grab subcategory and drag that to rows to the right of category. So now, and I'm going to actually just widen this area here between the two so I get a little bit more space. Well, that was a bit too much. But anyway, so I have my category, my subcategory, and then for each subcategory, you're seeing the sales. And again, you can hover over each bar to see the tooltip. So now you're seeing category, subcategory, and the sales values. And let's say we don't want the default blue bars. We want orange bars. So I'm going to go to the color on the marks card, and I'm going to choose orange. And now all of our bars are orange. And go ahead and name this sheet sales by category and subcategory. And now on your own, go back to the West and Southwest order count by customer sheet and change those bars to orange as well. And I should say, if orange is not your color, pick the color of your choice. But what we're starting to do here is get some consistency in coloration, which will ultimately lead for better dashboards at the end of the day. So I'm going to stick with my orange color as much as possible, but you can pick the color of your choice. Go ahead and save your file. I'm going to go back to my sales by category and subcategory sheet, and then I'm going to bring in a new worksheet. And for this one, we're going to create a pie chart. So we're going to drag market segment to columns and sales to rows. So it's going to give us a column chart, right? A column graph. And we want to change that to a pie chart. So what we're going to do is over on your upper right-hand corner, you will see the words show me. And you're going to click on show me and it opens up a panel. And so the show me panel, it will only allow you to select the appropriate type of visualization based on the data that you've dragged into your view. So some of these things are dimmed out because they don't meet the criteria for those types of visualizations. For example, if you hover over right underneath your table, there's one, it's called a symbol map. It's not available to you, and it says you need to have one geographic dimension at the bottom, 0 or more dimensions, and 0 to 2 measures in order to be able to do a symbol map. But you'll notice that the pie chart is available for us. If we hover over that, it says that you just need 1 or more dimensions and 1 or 2 measures at the bottom. So we meet that criteria. So we're going to go ahead and click on the pie chart. And now we have a little teeny tiny pie chart, right? Okay, so first things first, let's make it not so teeny tiny. If you look at your toolbar, there's a section where it says Standard. You're going to do the drop down arrow there and choose Entire View. So it kind of centers it in the view and it enlarges it. In the meantime, I'm going to click on Show Me again just to collapse that panel. And you'll see quite a few things happened when we changed it into a pie chart. First of all, there's nothing in columns and rows shelves anymore. But look at your marks card. So it took market segment and it made that the color. So that's why each one is a different color. And notice you have the color legend on the right side of your screen. Whenever it does that, it gives you the appropriate legend there, right? And then it took sum of sales and it put sum of sales. Well, first I'll start with the bottom one. It put it in the size area, right? So each slice of the pie is sized based on its sum of sales. And it also did something else with sum of sales. It put it on the angle on the marks card. So you can see these corresponding icons here, right? One is for size. The first one is for angle. The second one is for size on the marks card. So, and because we have sum of sales as the size, it gives you another legend over here, just showing you the range. You know, you have up to over 2 million for sales. And so if we hover over any slice of the pie, you'll see the market segment and you'll see the amount of sales for that market segment. On the marks card, we're going to go ahead and click on Label and show mark labels so we can see them outside of every slice of pie. And you can go to size on the marks card if you want to increase or decrease the size of the slices. We're going to go ahead and name this sheet. And this is going to be sales by market segment. So we have an average sales by market segment, and we'll just call it sales by market segment for the sheet and the title. And actually, just to be a little bit more clear here, I'm going to make it say total sales by market segment. And then I'm going to go back and rename the one that's called sum of sales by category, and I'm going to rename that to total sales by category, just to be a little bit more specific and consistent. And go ahead and save your Sample Superstore Live workbook. So let's go back to our sales by category and subcategory sheet. And we're going to sort this visualization. If you go to the subcategory heading, you'll see a little A to Z and button that you can use to sort. But what I'd like us to do is go to the drop down arrow to the right of your subcategory heading on your visualization. And you can see you can sort it in data source order, alphabetic order. You can sort it by a field or nested. We're going to hover over field and choose sum of sales. So now you'll see that it's sorted by sum of sales in descending order that way. And we can hover over it again. And if you see the lines with the drop down arrow, it lets you know that it's sorted descending by sum of sales across all the values of the subcategory. So not too difficult to sort in a Tableau visualization. Now, if we want to reverse the order to ascending by sales, we can just click on those lines, and now it's sorted in ascending order by sales. Now I'm going to have you go to the West and Southwest order count by customer sheet. Oops, didn't mean to do that. And I'm going to have you sort this by the count of orders. And actually ignore me for that one. Go to total sales by category sheet instead and sort in descending order by category. So it'll look like my screen when it's done. And to the right of category, you'll see the ZA for descending order. Go ahead and save. Let's go back to our total sales by market segment sheet with our pie chart and bring up a new sheet so we can create a histogram. A histogram shows how data is clustered and it can compare categories. So for this one, we're going to just drag the quantity measure to columns, and we're going to go to our Show Me pane, and we'll see the histogram is available for us on here. It's the one that looks like a up and down column chart. Actually, I can do this. I'll point to it for you. So the green one with all the columns is the histogram. So that is available for you by just dragging one measure onto your view. And so if you hover over histogram at the bottom, it tells you you just need one measure, right? So it creates these bins for you that will allow you to be able to see how your data is clustered. So let's finish building this one up. So I'm going to go ahead and select histogram, right? And a couple of things happened. If you look up at your columns and rows shelf, we have a quantity bin and now a count of quantity. So if you look at your x-axis on the bottom, it's the bins, right? So the first bin is that first column, right? And it goes from 0 to, it looks like 1.99. And then the second bin is in the next column, so on and so forth. So if I hover over the third column, there are 4 items in that bin, right? It's letting you know how many items are in that bin. There are 4 items in that bin. There are 2 items in the bin previous to it, none in the first bin. The fourth one has 5 items. Fifth one has 7. And the sixth one has 9 items. So your bins, really, when it comes to a histogram, those are the clusters of your data. Now, because we're using a histogram and it creates bins, you'll notice in your field list on the left, you have a quantity bin. And we can change the bin size. So right-click on the quantity bin in your field list. And you're going to choose Edit off of the list that pops up. So it defaults, right? It gives you a bin size of 1.77. We don't want that. We're going to select that and make the bin size 2 and click OK. So it adjusts a little bit. You saw the adjustment. It flickered just a little bit. And now you're seeing we have these other bins over here that barely show on the axis. For more analysis, let's go ahead and drag market segment field to the color on the marks card. So now we can see the quantities based on market segment, right? So in the first column, if you look at the red, right, that's the home office market segment. Orange is corporate, blue is consumer. If I collapse Show Me, I'll have that legend over on the right that's showing that. So I have, for the consumer one, for the second one, you can see the blue column there. Consumer segment has 2,581 as a count of quantity, 2 of which are in that bin. It's kind of how that's working. And we want to copy that count of quantity. We want to copy that to label on the marks card. So I'm going to hold down my control key, click and hold on the count of quantity in rows, and drag it over to label on the marks card. So now we're seeing that count of quantity on the histogram columns. And we'll name the sheet Market Segment Histogram. And save your file. So I've already created a new sheet so that we can create a line chart here. That's our next task. And what we're going to do is we're going to drag the order date field to columns. And we're going to drag both sales and profit to rows. So we now have 2 separate line charts, and we would like it to be not separate. So we're going to use Show Me, and we're going to select the dual line chart. So this one is for lines continuous, this one is lines discrete, and this one is dual lines. And notice the requirements, it just needs 1 date on the bottom, 0 or more dimensions, and 2 measures. So we have 1 date and 2 measures. I'm going to click dual line. And now we have 1 visualization. And I'm going to collapse Show Me. And we have a dual axis because the numbers for profit and the numbers for sales are very different. So it automatically creates a dual axis double line chart. Another thing I'll point out is the marks card. You'll notice that it put measure names on the color, right? So that's why we have the differing colors for each measure. And we also get our legend on the right-hand side. It also notes down at the bottom that we have the sum of profit and sum of sales measures, and it's showing the marks, so all marks here are automatic. Let's go ahead and name this sheet Sum and Profit by Year, and go ahead and save. And I've set up a new sheet for our stacked bar graph. This time we're going to select our fields a little bit differently. So far, we've been dragging and dropping them. This time, we'll use the double-click method. So in your field list, go ahead and double-click Order Date, and it puts it in columns automatically. And that's cool. That's where we want it. If we wanted it in rows, we could move it manually. So we're good with that one. And then under Product, we're going to double-click Category and Subcategory. And we actually want the category and the subcategory to be in the columns as well. So I'm going to just drag and drop them where we want them. And then go ahead to your field list and double click Sales. So it puts sales in text and we want it in rows. So I'm going to just drag it and drop it there. It's like 6 of one, half dozen of the other. Sometimes I just like to do things a little bit differently. Now, we want to use Show Me to change this into a stacked bar chart. So if you look at the stacked bar chart, it requires 1 or more dimensions and 1 or more measures. So we meet the requirements. I'm going to go ahead and click on it. And when we do that, it changes everything around from where we had it. So it made subcategory color on the marks card. It flipped category and year of order date in the columns, and it retained sales in rows. And so it does those changes so that the visualization will make more sense. And you can hover over any of your stacked bars. You have the legend on the right side. Since it made it color, it gave everyone is color coded. And you can see the legend shows category, subcategory, the year, and the sales. We're going to go ahead and name this sheet Annual Sales by Category and Subcategory. And as usual, save your file. The next type of viz that we're going to do is a box and whisker chart, also known as a box plot. And we are going to first review what it will look like. So on the left side of this slide, you have a full box plot. And then I pulled out one section of it on the right side just to give you some information. So anything that is outside of the box itself is considered an outlier. And so you'll see at the top of this broken out piece here that we have, oops, and I just zoomed in on that, but we have an outlier at the top, right? So it doesn't fit into the box. It's an outlier. It's outside the range. And so then, just to know what this is composed of, this part up at the top is the upper whisker. You'll learn more about that in a little bit. You have the median line, which is really one of the most important lines, and that's here. And then you have your lower whisker. So I've also included a slide in the deck telling you how to analyze a box plot, also known as a box and whisker plot. But I'll be going over to this with you when we do this next chart. So I'm going to switch back over to Tableau. So we're going to go ahead and create a new sheet in our Sample Superstore Live. And for our box plot, we're going to drag subcategory to columns, and we'll drag sales to rows. So we get our column chart here. Now we can change this into a box and whisker plot a couple of different ways. The way we're going to do it right now is on the marks card, we're going to change the mark from automatic to circle so that it lays the framework for our box plot. We're also going to drag the order date field, and we want this field on detail in the marks card. So I'm going to just drag it and drop it on top of detail. So now if I hover over any of the circles, you'll see that the year of the order date is showing. But we want to see the month of the order date. So in the marks card, you're going to do the drop down arrow next to year order date, and you're going to select month. And I'm just selecting just May. There's another month down below with the month and the year, but we just want the month. So now if you hover over any of the circles, you'll see the month. So we can make this into a box plot by right-clicking on the y-axis where your sales values are and choosing at the bottom Add Reference Line. So you have a line, you have a band, you have a distribution, and you have box plot. Let's go ahead and select box plot there. And you'll see the whiskers extend to data within 1.5 times the IQR. Now I have this on that supplemental slide for you, but I'll just tell you that IQR stands for interquartile range, and those would be the data points between the first and third quartile. So anything outside, and it does a calculation, if you will. This is the default option. So what this 1.5 times means, it's telling Tableau to make all of the data points on the box and whisker plot fit into 1.5 times the IQR. Anything outside of that is an outlier. Now, our only other choice here is the maximum extent of the data. We're going to leave it on within 1.5 times the IQR and go ahead and click OK. So now you have your box plot or box and whisper plot. And we're going to just take a look at one of the boxes so I can explain. And this is stuff that you saw on the slide, and I'll give you a further explanation. So this is the one that I drew out by itself on the slide. So it's like the fourth one over from the left. And if you hover into like a shaded gray area there, it gives you some information. So it's letting you know the upper whisker, the upper hinge, which I'll explain, the median, the lower hinge, and the lower whisker. So the median is the most important point. You can look around all of the members of this dimension, the subcategory dimension, and you can find the median by looking for the line that's in the middle of the box. That's your median line here. So when I hover in a gray area and it tells me the median is almost 14,000, if I look at the y-axis, I'll find the line closest to that, which is here, and that represents the median. Now let's talk the other ones. Analytically speaking, this, once you get used to it, and if you have a need to use box and whisker plots, they could be helpful for you, but they could be a little confusing at first. So each line on the box itself is a marker, and it provides a piece of statistical content. And we already located the median line, which is important because you can look across the members of this dimension, so the members of subcategory, and you can easily find the median lines on your other boxes. So let's talk about some more definitions. What is the upper whisker? The upper whisker is 50% higher than the IQR. The lower whisker, let me hover again, get my little guide up. The lower whisker would be 50% lower than the IQR. Any data points outside of the box and whisker are considered the outliers. So that's that circle at the top. I may have mentioned that one already. That's an outlier. And the lower and upper edges of the box are known as hinges. So the upper hinge, so the box is like that gray box. The upper hinge for this fourth one over is 21,407. And the lower hinge, the lower edge of the box, would be the smallest data value that is larger than the first quartile. The upper hinge, by the way, is calculated as the largest data value that is smaller than the third quartile. So all of that information is in your slide deck for future reference. But congratulations, you've created a box and whisker plot, or a box plot. Now we're going to go ahead and name this sheet tab. And the name is going to be Total Sales by Subcategory. And we'll call it Box Plot at the end. Go ahead and save your file. So we created this box plot by adding a reference line. I'm going to show you another way of creating it, but this will be a more traditional box and whisker plot. And so this one is a box plot, and it does have its whiskers and everything, as you see when you hover over the box. So what we're going to do, instead of recreating the wheel from scratch, is we're going to copy this sheet tab. And the way I'm going to copy it is I'm going to hold down my control key, click and hold on it, and just drag to the right until that downward pointing arrow is to the right of the original tab. And then I let go. So I get a copy of it. Let's start by renaming the tab. And instead of calling it a box plot, we'll add the word box and whisker plot. So you'll be able to distinguish between the two. And at the end of that, we want to get rid of the number 2 because it's a copy of the other sheet. Sorry, my OCD just clicked in when I looked up and saw the title. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we're going to get rid of the box plot reference line that we added. And we can do that by right-clicking on the y-axis again and remove the reference line. So it's back to the state where we just had the circle mark showing. Now we're going to go over to the right and expand our Show Me pane. And on your Show Me pane, you have a box and whisker plot viz. And we're going to select it. So this one looks a little bit cleaner than the first one that we did. This is a traditional box and whisker plot. And sometimes the terms are used interchangeably. You'll hear box plot, you'll hear box and whisker plot. So this one, you can actually see the lines more clearly. The outlier circles are not as big. And you have your gray shaded area there where if you hover over that box, you'll see the same information as on the previous one. So it's just a matter of which is your personal choice. You can create a box plot by adding a reference line, or you can create the box and whisker plot by using the Show Me feature. Let's go ahead and save again. So now you're going to learn how to show multiple aggregate measures on the same visualization. Let's go ahead and bring up a new sheet. And let's go ahead and drag Market Segment to the columns shelf. We'll drag Sales to Rows. And we'll drag Category underneath Product. Let's see what we want to do with Category. We're going to actually drag Category to Color on the marks card. So you get your legend because it's color-coded, right? And right now we're seeing the sum of sales. Sum is the default aggregate in here. So let's say we also wanted to see the average of sales and maybe even some more aggregates. So there's a couple of ways we can do this. So let's go and grab sales again from the field list and drag it up to rows to the right of the existing sum of sales. Now you'll notice you have 2 sum of sales. Now if your viz doesn't look like mine, go to Show Me. And I have the stacked column chart here. So the one I'm hovering over right now is the one that I'm using. So they're showing the exact same thing. On the second instance of sum of sales, do the drop down arrow, hover over measure, and choose average. So now you have sales and average sales. Let's do another. We'll do this one a little bit different. Let's hold down your control key and click and hold on average sales in the rows shelf and drag it to the right to make a copy of it. On the second instance of average, do the drop-down arrow, hover over measure, and choose median. So now we're seeing the median sales per market segment here. And we have the categories as color coding. So what I'm going to have you do now on your own, I'm going to have you display the max and the min of the sales and any other aggregates that you want. So now I'm looking at 5 different sales aggregates based on the market segment and the category. And let's just name this sheet Sales Aggregates. And go ahead and save. Now let's say that the sum of sales aggregate is the one that's most important to you. And so you really don't want all of the other aggregates to show in the visualization. There's something else you can do. Let's go to the worksheet menu, and you're going to choose Show Summary. And you'll notice on the right, you'll have a summary pane where it's showing you the aggregates that you have in your visualization. And so that means that you can see all of these aggregates and others without having them in the visualization. Let's go ahead and click on Average Sales in the Rows column and press Delete. You're going to do the same for everything except Sum of Sales. Because if you look at the summary card now, you can see the other aggregates. So this is a really great feature to use if your focus is on the sum and you don't want to overwhelm the visualization. You can still see the other aggregates on the summary card. And so if you go to the drop down to the right of the summary card heading, you'll see that you can even show more aggregates here. So whatever you want to show, I'll pick a standard deviation, and I'm going to widen the width of that panel so I can see the entire number. So that's just another way of seeing aggregates. Go ahead and save again. The last lesson in this module is showing the top 10 items. So the example that we want to see are the top 10 products by sales value. So let's go ahead and bring up a new sheet. And by the way, there is another way you can do that. On your toolbar, you have your new sheet icon. And you also have the ability to duplicate a sheet and clear a sheet from there. So I'm going to use the icon this time just for variety's sake. And so you learn a different method of doing what we've been doing. And we're going to go ahead and drag sales to columns. And we're going to drag product name to rows. And we have a lot of product names, so it's going to become a scrollable chart at this point. And I'm going to go ahead and collapse Show Me, and you can see the scroll bar on the right side. Well, we're going to fix that because we're actually going to narrow it to just the top 10 product names based on sales values. So a couple of ways we can do this. You can, in the rows shelf, you can right click on product name and choose filter. And so this is a filter that's only going to apply to this sheet because we're doing it at the sheet level. And you saw an example of that earlier. So notice at the top, we used the general tab when we filtered earlier. You also have a wildcard tab. So you can actually create a filter by saying it contains something, starts with, ends with, or exactly matches. You have a condition tab where you can set conditions. So for example, by fields, the sum of sales is equal to or greater than and equal to or not equal to a certain value. I'm going to put that back on none. And we want to go to the top tab. So we're going to do the option button in front of by field. And you're going to make sure it says top 10 by sales. And it's the sum of sales. And so the top is a drop down, so you can choose top or bottom. We're going to leave it on top. For 10, you can create a parameter. You can use a profit bin that's already there or top customers. We're going to just leave it on the number 10. So we're in the product name filter, and we want to see the top 10 product names based on their sum of sales. And we're going to click OK. So a couple of things happened. It actually applied the filter, so we don't have that scrollable list here. We have our top 10 product names based on their sales values. And the other thing that happened is it put product name in the filter shelf. And so we right-clicked on product name, where we did the arrow, and we went to filter from the rows shelf. We could have also dragged product name from the field list into the filter shelf. So many different ways of doing the same thing. So we want to go to label on the marks card and show our mark labels, so we can see the values of those bars at the end of them. We also want to click on color, and I'm going to go with my orange color like we did earlier, or whatever color you would like to go with. And on the toolbar, we're going to do the standard drop down and choose entire view. And so it makes it a little bit larger by doing that with this type of chart. Now, I'm also going to put my mouse pointer between the first product name and the first bar. Click and hold, so when you get that double arrow, and I'm just going to expand it so it shows more of the product name there. It will word wrap the rest of it. And we're going to, last but not least, we're going to name this sheet top 10 products by sales value. And save. This is the first of several modules where you got to create a bunch of different kinds of visualizations. We started with creating tables. And by the way, a table is a great companion visualization on a dashboard. So imagine having a map and then having an accompanying table, or a pie chart and an accompanying table. Then we learned how to create bar graphs and pie charts, and you learned how to sort your visualizations. We went on to creating histograms that show how data is clustered and using them as a comparison for categories. And then we moved on to creating line charts. Initially, when we chose 2 measures and 1 dimension, it created 2 separate line charts as part of the same visualization. And then we used the Show Me toolbar, which allowed us to select the dual line chart visualization, which created a dual axis in one visualization for our line charts. We then created stacked bar graphs using the Show Me toolbar to select that option as well. We moved on to creating box plots 2 different ways. The first way, we used a reference line of box plot to add to our visualization. And the second way, we used the box plot from the Show Me toolbar. You also learned how to add multiple aggregate measures to a visualization. And then you learned how to just have one and use the worksheet menu to show the summary card so you can display as many other aggregate measures for that particular visualization that you would need. And we ended by learning how to use a top filter where we showed the top 10 items. In this extensive course, we started by connecting to a variety of data sources, in particular text, Excel, and Access database data sources. In that module, you also learned how to paste in data from a clipboard and how to merge multiple data sources. We went on to connect to a SharePoint list, which you may have needed to install a driver in order to be able to do. And then we went over the Tableau interface. So you learned what everything is called on the screen. We started changing data types. You saw what happens when you change it to date time and there are no times in the data source. And we changed some metadata. And we started working with the Sample Superstore Tableau file. We split the customer name field into customer first and last on the data source view. And then we hid the original customer column so it wouldn't show in our field list. We even renamed the segment field to market segment. You learned how to apply a filter at the data source level, which means that every sheet will be filtered in that way. And you learned how to clear a filter at the data source level and add a filter at the sheet level. You learned the difference between dimensions and measures and their coloration. And then we moved into module 2, where we just started creating univariate charts. So we created tables, bar graphs, pie charts. You learned how to sort charts. We learned how to create a histogram and a line chart. You were introduced to the Show Me toolbar. And then we created stacked bar graphs and box plots. You learned how to show aggregate measures and the top 10 items by filtering.